acting is cheesy. The plot is stupid. I'm sorry, the plot is bad.
That's a little opening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Better Late Than Never special event here at ARG Presents. I'm double excited this week, Brent, because we spun the wheel. We made the deal, the wackiest deal for the wackiest machine, because this week we'll be playing a computer made by Camputer.
Yes.
And it's called the Lynx.
Yes.
It's not the Atari Lynx, and it's not Computer, it's Camputer.
That's it.
These are computers that you use solely for camping trips and outings, I believe. They're not. They're not. But the name struck me as particularly strange and odd. Brent, had you ever heard of the Camputer?
Oh my, no. No, are you kidding me?
Camputer Lynx.
Who has ever heard of this thing?
You know the thing about this? It's the Camputers Lynx.
Yes.
Too much. It should have either been called the Camputer, right? Or the Lynx. By the way, this predates the Atari Lynx.
Oh, wait. By quite a bit.
Predates it quite a bit.
By quite a bit, yeah.
And it's still probably about half as powerful. But I'm assuming this one never crossed the Brent radar.
No. This was definitely one I had not heard about until this episode.
Let's learn a little bit about this bad boy. And there's not a ton of big information, but there's some pretty amusing stuff in here. So, again, the name of the computer is the Lynx, manufactured by Camputers. You know when you get something like this, it's got to come straight from the streets of Sussex, a.k.a. the UK, another UK spectacular. This thing came into the world in March of 82 and ran for 2 big years into June of 84. Now, you're thinking to yourself, 2-year run, not bad. Well, this thing was perpetually late.
Yeah.
Tardy the party. We'll get to that. This had a full stroke 57-key keyboard on it.
Yep.
It looks okay.
It looks sort of Commodore-ish.
It had of course, what do these computers always have? The old Zilog Z80. This one is the Z80A. I read 2 different places for 2 different speeds. I read this ran at 4 megahertz. I read that it ran at 6 megahertz. So there are a lot of that sort of information about this thing. This thing had multiple memory configurations, 48 kilobytes up to 128 kilobytes, or even more. I think. Again, your mileage may vary on that because it was sort of all over the map. This thing could go into 256 by 248 or 512 by 480, 8 colors. Of course, there was a but when it comes to that, which we'll get to. The sound in this is the old one-voice beeper. It's got the speaker mounted on the motherboard on it. This thing had some pretty bizarre ports. It had a tape port. It had a TV out RF port. It had an RGB port. It also had a light pin port. I always like when machines have those. And then you had
those things never took off.
Then you had the optional extension box port, which you could put some other. Yeah, well, what do you want? It's the extension. It had an external power supply. It did have a floppy unit with a butt. So a lot of the things you're going to find out about this system, I should mention, when this debuted with a 48K model, you're looking at 225 pounds in 82. Well, 225 would still be what I would consider, I wouldn't say budget, but it's not like ultra expensive. It's getting there. So it's
not Apple expensive, but that's still pretty darn pricey.
This machine kept being great, but not getting released on time. Like, they're like, we got a 48K version. And then, like, time would pass. Other machines would ship with 48K. And then they'd be like, aha!
And when you did it!
And then they'd be like, we got a 128K version. And time would pass. Other machines would ship. They'd be like, aha! And they'd have it. There were a bunch of crazy issues with this thing. For starters, one of the things I read over and over when I was researching this is that they kept telling people, hey, you can add memory to this thing. It's super expandable. Had a floppy drive, whatever. Well, you could do these things. You had to send it back to the factory. And the Camputers was notoriously slow with your stuff. And so they'd have to go in there, and it would take a long time to get all your stuff done. One of the things that struck me as particularly amusing on this thing, so you could program in this thing, and you actually had the ability to manipulate using assembly code things, hardware devices on the bus. This thing. Well,
That's pretty cool.
well, in the manual it says, "Listen," and this was true, and this was written in the manual. If you make a mistake in your programming, you can destroy the computer.
Yeah.
So you can physically fry this thing if you drop the ball on it very easily. Of course, it did have a floppy drive, which was a pretty big deal at the time. They only shipped about 30,000 of these in the entire lifetime of this thing.
Wow. I knew the count was low, but I didn't realize it was that low.
Yeah, it's pretty low. And who knows what different configurations were shipped with it. They also had CPM support with I read 3 different places that they had CPM support, but then I read from a guy who said they promised CPM support, but it didn't deliver it. So I don't know exactly what.
Well, I mean, considering their track history,
that's a thing they had an issue with that. And something else would happen is when you upgrade let's say you set your Camputer Lynx in to get the memory upgraded. Well, when you got it back, some of the crap you used to run wouldn't work anymore. It was so there were very few some people that did software for it. So there wasn't a ton of software. I mean, I'd say when we had the TOSEC on this thing, and I pretty much think we saw pretty much everything. And there wasn't it wasn't like it was completely empty, but there wasn't a ton of stuff on it. But it looks like it's a very brown computer. Also, it's got, the keyboard's brown, the case is brown. It's just very brown looking machine. But there was nothing on it that really took off. And ultimately, between the fact that they had trouble shipping these, they had trouble keeping up dates, and ultimately every time they shipped one of these things had already been passed by like the ZX or whatnot.
Yeah,
this thing was doomed from Jump Street. Another thing it had going for it is it had these high resolutions, which was good, but it didn't have a way to move graphics very well at these resolutions. And so what you got, and we noticed this when we played games on it, is that you got this sort of it plays games like a classic computer does. It's not like you play games on a ZX, it moves just pretty smooth, for example, or even an Amstrad. This is that jumpy.
Yeah, everything's on a grid.
Right. It's not smooth at all. It didn't have the ability to render real smooth graphics.
Yeah.
That can be smoothly moved around on the screen. But it didn't have. It really was. I think it was aimed more as a business machine than it was as a. They didn't plan on having any games on it. Of course, games make machines sell. So
what? I guess it's hindsight, but why would you ever make that assumption?
Yeah.
It's just setting yourself up for failure.
Estimates, according to sources, it's estimated that 20 to 30% of that 30,000 were sold in the UK, and then the rest were sold mostly in France, Spain, and Greece. And they it says here that the competitors at the time were of course the 48K Sinclair Spectrum and the Orig, and so it got pounded by both those.
When the Orig kicks your butt, you're in trouble.
Well, the Orig, you got to think the Orig's a real popular machine.
I know.
In certain areas. So it's an interesting little machine. It died a death. I should mention I saw a guy take one of these apart on because we obviously don't have one.
Yeah.
I saw a guy take one of these apart on YouTube. And inside this thing are like 1 million baud wires. And from what I've heard, that was there was a lot of after PCB printed bodging that had to go on to get these things to function.
Yeah.
And were they reliable? And they had external power supplies that probably helped. I didn't read anywhere that they weren't reliable. But I don't know. There's a very low presence of this computer across the net.
Yeah.
You don't see much about it.
And usually when you're searching for it, like Google or whatever, really wants to steer you in other directions.
Yeah, well, it's because it thinks you're misspelling computer.
And then you want the Atari Lynx.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, it was a double trouble on this computer. But still, as far as the computers that we've looked at in the past, This was certainly not the most remedial or the ugliest.
no.
It had like I said, the keyboard looks okay. I saw a guy like hit the keys; they didn't sound super mushy. You know, I'm sure it's not the best.
I would
right up the
certainly
way.
say this is a computer in the sea of many that failed not because it wasn't good enough, but because it wasn't fast enough.
Well,
and I don't mean fast as in clock speed. I mean fast as in getting it to market.
yeah, and it also like if you're competing with say the ZX, all right, and then later on you're competing with the Amstrads,
Yeah.
or even other European machines that sold better, you're going to have to come in with something. Like these guys, they had a better, for example, against with compared with like say the Spectrum, they had a better keyboard. But I mean, the Spectrum was like just as capable in most ways, and in ways that people would care about.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that it had the higher resolutions, it doesn't work for games. And so at that point, you've limited yourself to a business environment. And I don't know how many Spectres were used in the business, but you had the BBC,
The BBC would
out there,
fill that role.
in the UK, and then you also did have your Oryx. And by the way, your work also had a decent keyboard and was okay.
Sure.
So we had. Well, I want to thank Pajako, who turned us onto what I would consider a top shelf emulator for this thing.
Yeah, it seemed to do pretty much everything we needed.
It worked right out of the gate, and it worked well.
Yeah.
And I was able to check out a few different titles.
I did as well. Yeah.
Where I ultimately decided on the one I picked out. So, and you were late to the party on picking one of these out.
I was.
How do you want to? You want to go first on this?
I believe that I will go first,
All right.
Aaron. And I'm taking a look at Oh Mummy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Aaron, Oh Mummy released on a few systems, but the order in which it was released, kind of odd. It was a pack-in game for the Amstrad.
Really?
The Amstrad CPC. It was a bundle game for the Spectrum. It was also released for the MSX. The Einstein, remember that?
Oh yeah.
And of course, the Lynx here. This is a game. It's. I picked it for two reasons.
Yeah.
If you go back, this guy, the author of this game, whose name was Darren White, interesting fellow. He made games for a few companies. He actually went in and became a partial owner of Jim Software. Jim Software, who was the developers of this game, put themselves out there, got screwed in a few business deals, which was highly rampant in 80s computer land.
Did those deals involve making games for the Camputer?
Well, no, it was involved of making games and then not getting paid for the games.
I see.
So the studio kind of fell apart, and he stepped up and said, let's kind of put this back together, and released a few more things before ultimately, of course, letting it all go. But he was an employee when making Old Mummy. And everyone says this is an Amador clone, right? Where you, that's what a lot of people are comparing it to.
Have they played Amador? Yeah, those guys are idiots.
But he said no, it was not inspired by that. It was actually inspired by Painter, which is a game we played on a month ago.
What was that system? Do you recall?
Painter? It was on a few systems. So the evolution here is incredibly obvious. And that's actually why I want to talk about On Mummy. And it's the evolution of taking this game where you have a grid of squares, you run around the square, and that activates the square. And in Amador, it gave you points. In Painter, it gives you points, and you've got enemies chasing you that continue to multiply as you go along the levels. And then in this, it takes it one step farther. It puts a story to the game, a relevant, believable story for the setting that the game is put in. It has you as a British archaeologist who is heading to Egypt to basically rob it.
That's how we do it.
I mean, they said they're recovering artifacts, but
the Egyptians recover by digging up the graves. That's how you do it.
So the Egyptians were doing okay digging out these artifacts until they uncovered a mummy.
Yeah.
And the mummy chased all the workers off. And you play as a character that gets in there and gets the job done. So you have to run around these squares, and when you run around the squares, that is symbolic of you working the land, pulling out the artifacts.
How about you? Are you not in a tomb? I mean, you are, right? You're not
Well,
really working the land.
Well, no, you are.
You are.
You
So
are.
These are sub tombs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you reveal, when you walk around an area and reveal it, a few things can happen. It can be empty.
Yeah.
Sure, that happens. You can find the artifact you're looking for.
All right.
The big sarcophagus. Yeah. You can find a key, which will unlock to go to the next room. You can find an evil mummy.
Yeah.
Who once you go around the room, it kind of wakes up and you can see it digging out of its grave.
That. It's pretty cool.
Or you can find a scroll, which if you have a scroll, you can kill one mummy, one per level. And it has to be on the level you got it. It doesn't go into an inventory. You just uncover the scroll and then you can run into one mummy and not die. Or you can just uncover these little loot rooms.
Yeah.
And the loot rooms are signified by little pound signs.
Yeah, it's like the mummy's been stashing pounds.
Well, those represent small artifacts that you're bringing back.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Like money.
So it's just you're filling your coffers with money.
That's how you do it.
So it's the theme of this is so horrible. It's so on the nose.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
that's what they convert to eventually. You know what I mean? That's what's going to happen. Why just cut out the middleman? Listen, you're just going to sell these artifacts. Here's the actual money.
I don't think it's supposed to be like that though. So this game, even as itself evolved, because on the CPC, when you ran around the loot rooms that were just the money symbols, you couldn't go in and get the money. You just got rewarded money,
right.
Which made it very much like Painter, which made it very much, that was more common copy. Having those loot rooms open up just slightly, it's just a little door at the bottom with 6 money symbols on the inside that you can run in and get.
Yeah.
And you can jump in there and kind of hide from the mummy, although the mummy can go into those rooms.
Oh, yeah. They absolutely
made
can.
A tremendous difference to how this played versus all these other loop around the box games.
Yeah.
And not having that in the CPC versions, it was in the ZX version. Of course, it was in the Lynx version. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to look at the MSX version, but I've heard that it is the creme de la creme. So I'm guessing that it has that as well. And I think the reason why it wasn't on the Amstrad versions was a limitation on how small they could make the graphics that you would go in, and the grid had to be a certain size because it's a 5x5 grid or a 5x4 grid, and then they couldn't manipulate the sprites at a size. I think I don't know that for sure, but
you're not a programmer, are you?
Not having the ability to go into the rooms makes a tremendous difference on how this plays and how it feels. The game itself, it's a very basic concept. It's a very basic maze game concept. If you run into a zombie, the zombie dies. Mummy. If you do it,
it's called Oh Mummy.
On the very first thing you do, if the first action you take is to sacrifice a guy and run into the mummy, you are left without an enemy on the first board.
Yeah.
Unless you uncover one from the tomb, right? That's a weird mental place to be because I started finding myself sacrificing to get rid of a mummy so I could collect more loot. Because if you get through 5 stages, you then fly back to the UK and cash in all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you can get rewarded with an extra man. So it becomes a weird puzzle in your brain. If you beat the level or leave the level with, say, 2 mummies following you, those 2 mummies come to the next room. So you can have a total of like 8, 9, 10 zombies or mummies running around at the same time. And then it's chaos. And I hated and love the way they do death. When you die, the mummy that killed you disappears, but you spawn right back where you were.
Yeah.
So if there's
In real time.
if there's a whole line of mummies, you're just gonna die and die and die. And at first, that really annoyed me
It really annoyed me too.
because I didn't because it you know you're not it's not the way it's supposed to be in gaming. You're supposed to get a little bit of chance to run away, whatever. But after I thought about it more, I was like, this is kind of clever because it makes you want to deal with the zombies.
Mummy.
So sure, I'm going to keep doing that. It makes you deal with the mummies on the levels previously if you can. And I think it also has a risk reward element. If you don't unearth the other mummy, it won't come chase you. And if you find the scroll and kill the one that starts in the room, well, then you've got free reign. It's a much deeper game strategically if you sit down and think about it and how you want to play and how you want to get that high score, because ultimately it is a high score game. It eventually just starts looping. But when I sat down, I started really thinking about it and really strategizing. It's deep. It's deep, man. For a little game like this, there's a lot to think about and a lot to do. Aaron, have you played Oh Mummy before this? Because this is a very popular game.
I think I have played this on something. It wasn't on the Camputer Lynx, I can tell you that. But I mean, I don't remember how. I don't remember getting into it that much. It may have been something I played like an MSX stream or something. But when it came up, one day, I love games that have the instructions built in, and this one did.
Oh yeah, and
it's
long
elaborate,
backstory.
Yeah, and it explains all the different levels, all the different options. It explains where you can change the keyboard or mouse, and I like that. So that was a good thing. It had a little theme that came on. It had an opening screen. It had all the stuff that you expect from like a nice game. And then I played with the keyboard, although I wish I'd played the joystick. But I played the keyboard.
I played with the keyboard as well.
And it's funny. This game won't let you use the arrow keys on your keyboard. No. But it's funny. I looked this up. So it said you can't use red keys.
Yeah.
Okay. And I looked, and all the arrow keys are red keys. Which is funny because on my game, the arrow keys are the default keys.
Yep.
So it was very odd.
It was odd.
My keys. And this game is one of those games. It's a simple premise, but they execute it pretty well. The uncovering the mystery boxes to see what's in there, the mystery digs is fun. I like that when you find the mummy, it goes around the box, digging its way out. That's cool. It gives you a second to get out of there. The mummies don't look like mummies. Look more like skull and crossbones or something.
Yeah, they're not greatly.
And your guy just looks like it sort of looks like a guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, that doesn't mean anything because the graphics of the little digs are pretty good.
Yeah.
The sarcophagus looks like a sarcophagus. The money, you know what you're getting. The scroll looks like a scroll. It moves at a pretty good clip. You didn't mention this, but
I'm going to get into it.
Okay, but you really have to kind of hone in on the level you want to play at and the speed, which is pretty important.
Both of which are adjustable.
Yeah, both of which are adjustable. Brent's right. Going into the pound vaults or whatever, it makes it better because it takes longer.
Risk versus reward.
In fact, I could have seen where you could have actually implemented that for like the scroll as well. Make you have to go in to get it, but you're not going to say why they didn't do it, but you could have. But it gets hard very quickly. I will say the game is glitchy. More than one time.
Really?
Yeah. More than once. I would be in a maze that the door would never open. And I'd be the only one there.
Did you find the key in the sarcophagus?
Dude.
You have to have both.
I had everything. Went everywhere and the door never opened.
I've never had that happen.
It happened to me twice in the game. But otherwise, I think it plays pretty fair. Like Brent mentioned, you can find the key right away and just leave.
Well, you have to find both, yeah.
Once you find those two things, you can go. And so and it's probably not the worst thing you want to do if you want to just play for a long time. If you want to, one thing you can do, and Brent mentioned, is like you can just basically sacrifice a guy and then just get all the money.
Yeah.
And all you have to worry about is uncovering another mummy. And if there's a scroll there, you're good to go. So there's certainly a strategy to that. But I actually enjoyed this. I thought it was a pretty good game. I mean, it's one I'd heard about before. And in fact, I think I own a copy of this on Spectrum. It's probably in one of my
One
one of my folders
Beats,
over
yeah.
there. I'm pretty sure I've got at least one of these, maybe two. But I mean, this reminds me of your old school, simple, simple graphics, simple gameplay. But they would actually try to come up with some pretty good gimmicks.
Yes.
And I think and the people whoever thought I'd like to meet the guy was like, oh, it's an Amador. Well, you're an idiot. Amador is not like this at all.
A lot of people have said
Well,
that. It was in the reviews. A lot of people said that.
It's because it's just like everything's like Donkey Kong. Remember that in the old
I
magazines?
know.
Oh, everything's just like Donkey. No, it's not. If you jump up on a platform, it doesn't mean they're ripping off Donkey Kong, you knucklehead. But it was early days, and the people were dumb. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
Now, a few things. It was asked in chat by Duncan Styles. Do we think that they made the game intentionally as deep as I'm projecting it to be, with the taking mummies into the next room and the way the deaths happen where you stay in the same place and you just get hammered, lose all your guys real fast? That's a good question. I would assume that yes, it was intended. And the reason why I say that is in the long text scroll on how to play the game, they talked at length about bringing zombies into the other room. Bringing mummies into the other room, and how dangerous that is, and ways to avoid it, and how it might be better to leave some stuff behind, that sort of thing. Maybe I'm trying to make it out deeper than it is. I don't think so, though.
I didn't think it was like what I would call particularly deep.
Well, when I read an article about this guy, he talks about this game. This is one of his babies that he really loved, and he wanted to set a lot of records straight. And it was
you got to set the record straight
about being Amador versus.
Yeah,
he said no, it was really with Painter.
I got it.
So I think that he did have more thought into this game than maybe what the surface looks like. There are difficulty levels in the game that makes the mummies smarter, which I think just makes them more aggressive or less aggressive.
Yeah.
Is that what you spelled?
Yeah.
And you can change the speed of the game.
Well, I mean, they I don't know. When you don't, in the early levels, I only played the high levels once because it got mauled instantly.
Yeah.
But like they don't necessarily come at you. They're sort of like the ghosts of Pac-Man. It's sort of like they'll get around to you, but they don't necessarily come after you.
Well, I played it on the mid difficulties, what I enjoyed the most, because they will tail you and they will follow you, and you will have to make
and they match your speed.
Yeah, you're the exact same speed as the mummies. So when you go, you have to really go around those corners at the precise timing, and eventually they will leave you alone. Eventually, but it might take 2 seconds or it might take 15 seconds, and you got to keep making those loops and going down corridors and stuff, so I found that to be the most enjoyable. One last thought on this, Aaron. When I picked this game, I had never heard of it before.
All right. Really?
So,
because I mean, it's got a name,
Yeah. Well, boy does it have a name.
Yeah.
Because it has been released as recently as a few years ago on phones, on iOS. It also got a new Genesis release, a fan-made release. The article that I read about him was from 2018.
Yeah.
So they tracked him down and asked him questions about what he thought about the new releases and all that kind of stuff.
It seems like on Amigos we covered a port of this. I mean, or maybe it was on here, but somewhere we've talked about a recent port of this to something. So clearly it's something, someone's still messing with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, but that tells me that this, first of all, it sold a ton of copies because it was a pack-in game.
Yeah.
It was a pack-in and a compilation game. So it sold a ton of copies. It's a ton of people's childhoods. A member of our Discord, Jocko, showed a picture where he owned this on 8 different cassettes.
Yeah.
Insanity. Aaron, speaking of him, do you got that review pulled up?
I can. I want to say before we get into that, I'm surprised that this never made it to the Coco.
Well,
what if there's a Coco version?
You know where it got hacked to?
Where?
In television.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I believe it.
There are bootleg copies of it on there.
So, Jocko chimes in here with a review. He says, "Oh, mummy," or is it "Oh, mummy"? Being the world's foremost "Oh, mummy" expert, Okay. I own a bunch of copies of this on cassette for different systems because it's kind of funny. Anywho, I hadn't played he misspelled Camputers. I haven't played the Camputer Lynx version until recently, as I'd always assumed it was more or less the same as the Specky version, but surprisingly not. In this version, you can go into each box and collect the money for extra points, and that comes with a risk because the mummies can get you in there.
Yeah.
Like all versions, though, you can just make a run for the door as soon as you get the key. But the risk reward here is enhanced by said extra collection and makes the game better.
Absolutely.
One thing I didn't like was it doesn't change empty box areas, so you're never entirely sure if you've uncovered them or not.
That's a fair criticism too. On most of the other versions, it at least goes from a dirt brown or a sandy brown to a darker brown, and it does not do that on this version.
Once you went all the way around them,
you can have one little footprint off and not realize it.
Sound like the Specky version becomes irritating quickly.
Yeah.
But honestly, having the same bit of music play over and over like the Amstrad version does is no better either. So audio not great. Graphics are like the Specky version, very basic, and gives the game a feeling of being written in BASIC, but overall the Lynx version is still better than the Specky version. 7 out of 10. P.S. If you want to see the ultimate evolution of the game, check out the homebrew Sega Genesis version. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Good stuff there. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I kind of like these old games. They're the kind you just pick up and play real quick, and then you're done with them. And this one I thought more than others actually had a little bit of substance to it. Yeah, I mean we've played games like this on other systems. It's funny how these old systems, they're kind of basic. You get a basic platformer, you get a basic game like a maze game, but it's still fun.
Absolutely. Now, Aaron, what did you bring to the table?
So I took some time to try to figure out something that I hadn't seen before. And boy, I hadn't seen this, and I can tell you that. And you know how your guy gave interviews and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know who made this. I have no idea.
Wow.
But the game I picked to play is Floyd's Bank, which is a great name too. It's Floyd's Bank, everybody. Released in 1983. Now, Floyd's Bank has been miscredited in a lot of places. A lot of places have this being developed and published by Jim Software. Incorrect, sir. Because I actually found boxes for this that had that developer's name on it, and they were Romic Software. I did a little lookup because I thought I'd heard of these guys that I had. They were around from '82 going forward, and they did a ton of stuff on the Vic and the Dragon and some other stuff. They were a pretty big name. Of course, they were out of the UK, as you can imagine. As I look over their little stuff that they did, I mean, you're not a big Vic guy, the Brent, but they did a bank robber on the ZX. They did a game on the CC4 called Zappy Zooks. That sounds pretty good. They did Dickie's Diamonds on the CC4, Fool's Gold. So they did some stuff. Cyclops on the Coco, if you're into Coco. They did a few BBC Micro. The funny thing is this list doesn't include any of the stuff they did on the Camputer. And I don't know how much they did on the Camputer, but I know they did this. Unfortunately, Floyd's Bank does not include any cool instructions on board or anything like that. You just basically get into it. But I found 2 different boxes for this. And the 2 different boxes have descriptions on them. So I got lucky
there. You go.
Right on the front. So the first one I found is Romic Software presents Floyd's Bank for the Lynx. You are an inexperienced bank robber. You must penetrate the bank's 4 anti-theft zones to steal gold and valuables from the safety deposit boxes. If it takes too long, nerve gas is released by the bank's security door. So that's the first explanation I found. One thing I like about this box is at the bottom of it says, in quotes, a real action shot of the game. And had a big picture of the game on it. like this is going to blow you away. And then underneath it says, will you be the Supreme World Champion?
I think I got a chance.
I want that on his shirt. And the other box also has a small thing on it. It says, gold and valuables beyond expectation await you in Floyd's Bank. Can you penetrate the vault? It's got a picture of Floyd. Floyd sort of looks like he's wearing Devo glasses, and he's got a purple and black striped shirt, and he's got a pound bag over his, like a money bag
Yep.
over his shirt, over his shoulder. So Floyd's getting it done. So Floyd's Bank is, in fact, a 4-screen extravaganza to excite the senses and challenge you to be Supreme World Champ. This game doesn't mess around. It starts you out on section 1. I will say each section of this game has its own title screen.
Yeah.
Complete with stylized graphical names.
Yeah.
The first level of this is called the Plastine sector. Okay. And this is a pretty simple level, but it's it also can be the hardest one.
Yeah.
So picture in your mind, if you're playing Berserk, they have those big wide lanes for mazes. Picture something like that, and your job is to go up and down through this maze to the exit. Sounds simple, right? And occasionally even openings will appear to make it quicker. Well, also these little dots appear. Okay, if you're near a dot for too long, the dot explodes, and it has a blast radius, a big square.
Huge blast
radius.
Yes.
So picture a dot and then a rectangle around the dot. If you get caught in that area, you're dead. Now, when you die in Floyd's Bank, you get the cool screen comes back up to tell you the level. It's like, this is your last chance. You get 2 chances. That's it.
That's it.
So you have to navigate your way through that kind of big lane maze, avoiding the explosions. And they won't explode if you're not close enough to them. If you see them explode, you're dead.
Yeah.
If you ever see one explode, I never once saw one explode.
I never got away from it.
And I wasn't in the blast zone. I should mention at the top of the screen, there's a timer in your score. And so if you're in there for too long in the level, then you heard the thing, nerve gas. But in game terms, that means you just get killed. It also has the high score at the top listed on the screen, which that's a nice touch. So that's the Plastine sector. The second level is called the Labyrinth. The Labyrinth is exactly what it says it is. It's a big level with a red maze at the top, and there's money around the labyrinth in various places. And your job is to go and retrieve the money. And once you get all the money, an exit opens up and you can leave. Sounds simple. Well, in this level, the maze literally is perpetually shifting.
Yes.
And so you have to basically get through the maze, get the money, but there's no just easy way.
Yeah.
You have to hope that openings appear that you can get into. Can you be trapped in one area for 15 seconds? Heck yeah, you can.
Absolutely,
Can you get to the point where you can't leave because they can't get out the door because it never opens up? Yeah. This is another level like the first one. That's sort of I completed this. I went through this whole game my first try. Okay. And then subsequent tries, I did not because, and that's because it's a random. A lot of times I guess there's some skill to this, but a lot of times it's basically always go. It's like being a running back in the NFL. As soon as you see an opening, go. You can't hesitate. You got to go.
Yes. Because the maze, the maze can't kill you on its own.
No,
you can't get smooshed by a wall.
You'll run out of time.
Yeah.
Is the problem. The third level is the most cryptic, Gold Vault. And so in this level, you're in a big empty space, and around that space will appear numbers to show up, 1 through 7. And then some a shape, like an X or whatever that shape is.
Yeah.
And I
assume that was gold.
I don't know. I don't know exactly how this level works. At first, I thought you had to get pairs of numbers. All right, but that didn't seem to do anything. And then I thought you had to get a certain amount of gold to open the exit. I don't. So because I've seen the exit open early, I've seen it open late. I thought you were supposed to avoid the X's, but you're not. They give you points.
No, they're gold.
So I don't know exactly, but all I do on this level is just go and get as much stuff as I can and hope the exit opens. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I believe you're working out a combination. But the way
why is the gold there to get?
Well, it's a vault.
Oh, okay.
I believe that you have to get all the numbers 1 through 7. And once you get all the numbers 1 through, you can get.
I didn't think of that.
You can get 2 or 3 multiple times.
Yeah.
But if you're missing a number, because not all the numbers are there all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to collect numbers to get other numbers to appear. I think once you get the numbers 1 through 7, you don't even have to get them in order. The door opens, you can
The
leave.
funny thing is, since we don't know exactly what we're doing, for whatever reason, this is still the easiest level. I don't know.
You almost can't die.
Yeah, I mean, you run out of time, but I mean, I never had a problem where I couldn't get.
No.
But I mean, so that's Floyd's Bank for you. The most confusing level is the easiest one, and then the last level is the robot cavern. Okay, now this is interesting. In the robot cavern, it starts you in the middle of the screen, and there's like probably 9 or 10 exits, or probably I think 4 at the top and bottom, and 3 at the side. I think so. 14, whatever it is, different exits. But anyway, robots come out of these exits. All right. And you're in the middle, and your job is to go around and just try to find which exit's the real exit.
Yeah.
And you have, while you're avoiding the robot. So you're ducking into a room or to a doorway. If you don't leave, then that's not it. And you go to the next one, and you go through them all. Sometimes you get lucky and you literally get it right away. And sometimes you're going through all these things. Now, if you can't keep track of the ones you've tried, then you're boned. And then once you finish that up, the game repeats. I like the idea. Listen, I didn't hate this at all. I mean, there's some randomness to it. Don't get me wrong. But how many games back in the day in '83 were giving you basically 4 different slants on a game, and they're really totally different levels. They're not similar at all.
No.
The graphics are sort of what you would expect of the era. They're a lot like the graphics in Oh Mummy. They're your guy looks like a little guy, and the bad guys look like little ghosts from like Pac-Man or something like that. The explosions just look like I mean, they look like explosions, but the bombs look like little dots.
Oh yeah, the bombs look like little health packs.
Yeah, they're not healthy. I will say that the third level was pretty amorphous and strange, but the rest of them, I thought it was a pretty good looking game. Of course, you didn't have any instructions, so I jumped into it without knowing anything and figured it out pretty quick, except for the third level, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. You can ramp through this quickly and have a good time, and it does keep your high scores. It's got a high score table. It's a high score game. The fact that it does, no matter how well you did before, if you die twice on the same level, you're done.
Yeah, it's over.
But I don't mind that. It gives you a chance. In fact, that's better, I think, for a game like this. So I was wrong. There's eight exits. I didn't think there were 14. I was close. But a fun game that I enjoyed, given the era and given the specifications of the machine. What did you think about this one, the Brent?
I was pleasantly surprised by this.
Yeah.
I did not enjoy this as much as my game, but I also enjoyed it more.
Your game's more of a game.
Well,
like you can play that game and think, okay, this is a game. You can play this one and be great at it and then get screwed.
Well, this is something that if you have 20 minutes to invest, this is worth playing.
Yeah.
Okay. It has almost zero replayability, even though you can adjust the difficulty levels. The score, there's too many random things that can happen for me to think that this is a fair skill game and thus a fair high score game. It's not like you're going to pick up something and get 10,000 points where someone else would only get 5.
Right.
It's where, like the maze, sometimes you just get trapped in the maze forever
and you die.
Yeah. And it sucks because there's no way to predict it. There's no way to manipulate it. I tried. It's just completely random. I died the most without question on the very first stage.
Yeah, it's the hardest one. It's because it's totally random. And
it is completely random.
Second time.
Well, there is no timing. The mines can pop up beside you, trigger, and you're dead, and that's just it.
Well, you get a second or two.
You do, but you can't get away.
It's not easy. It sort of have to be not close to them immediately to get further away.
Yeah.
Of course, they do open the parts of the maze will open up, and so sometimes you can just ram through.
Well, I think that is partially a glitch because you'll see that they kind of the holes pop up where the mines were. I think maybe that's supposed to simulate.
I think so because they don't always pop up where the mines are. Sometimes they just pop up and you can go through them. As far as I'm concerned, feature.
Oh, that's fine.
Feature.
But it doesn't save you enough time going through the holes. The second stage is the labyrinth, probably my least favorite. There is no threat to avoid. It's just, is the maze going to be kind enough to let you get somewhere?
It's satisfying when you complete it, though.
It's sort of.
I'm always like,
I mean,
excited. I'm always excited. So, and that's another one where that's the only one where I'm really watching the timer. I'm like, oh, come on,
well,
come
yeah,
on.
but you can't do anything about it.
But I mean, it builds up the tension. Hey, listen, it's very similar to an actual bank robbery. It's exactly the way it goes.
Yeah. And when I enter the Minotaur's maze, it's always a bad
Hey,
time.
that's a good selling point for your savings and loan. Listen, sure, some people have a vault. Also, we've got a maze. It's ever shifting. It's full with nerve gas. Why don't they just leave the nerve gas turned on all the time?
Yeah. So the maze, you're really you can just be setting 3 pixels from the end, and the wall just never opens. You're like, what? Come on, what am I going to do here? And then, of course, the moment you walk to another corner to kind of approach it from a different angle, the hole opens where you were, and you have no chance to get back because it is just bam, bam.
Yeah.
The number bank vault stage, that's a complete throwaway.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know because I mean, I enjoy running around and getting them, but I mean.
But there's no threat.
Well, I mean, there's a timer, so you have to get. I mean, you're right. Maybe it's just. And
No,
again, let's pretend for a minute you're right.
Okay.
And the numbers.
I'm pretty sure I am.
And the numbers 1 through 7, you have to get each one. Okay.
Yes.
Because I tried getting pairs. I never exactly. And sometimes I get it open early. At that point, it becomes much like that fits the theme of this game.
Yes.
Random crap with a timer.
Yeah.
I mean, really, in retrospect, it's not a good game at all. But the design is horrible. It's like a decent roll to D20. Oh, you're dead. But somehow it has an appeal. I don't know what it is.
Well, I mean, at least with the labyrinth stage, it's my least favorite stage. But there is, like you said, there is anticipation, there is excitement. You don't control it,
right.
But it is there. Where the third stage, the number stage, it's a complete throwaway. I just run in, I collect everything, I leave, it's over. The fourth stage is the money stage. The robots, and you have to find which exit's the real exit.
It's the least random and the most like a real game.
Yeah. And that one, it's a good ender. I've never been killed by the robots, although I've come exceedingly close on many occasions. Because
you've never been killed by them? I've been killed by them.
You have to commit to an exit. It's just a 1 square commitment to go into this little hole, but you can't go up and down. You have to go back the way you came.
Right.
And there's 8 robots patrolling the area, and it's always, can I get in there, check that's the exit, and get back out? I've had plenty of times where I've made a break for an exit, and if it wasn't the exit, I was dead.
Yeah.
But it always turned out to be the exit.
The robots look like Space Invaders.
Yeah.
They look like.
Yeah, they do.
But I mean, you're right. That is of the 4 levels, that's the one that's most like a game.
Yes. But absolutely.
But this is one of those games that's more than the sum of its parts. Because it's different. And plus when you realize that the game can screw you, you don't feel too bad about when it happens. It's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. When you eventually die, it's like, okay, it was my time to die, I guess.
And the one thing about giving you 2 chances at each level that I like, that's almost like the game saying, listen, we're probably going to screw you.
Screw you. That's exactly what it is.
Have another chance. I'm sure on that one we botched it. Sorry about that. Here you go. You go back in.
But of the 2 games, while I enjoy mine more, why I enjoy Oh Mummy more, if I was going to recommend a game for someone to check out, it would be Floyd's Bank. And the reason why is you can sit down with Floyd's Bank, experience the whole thing, and it be something new that you haven't seen anything like this before. And 20 minutes later, you can turn it off and you'll never go back to it, but you will have, for those 20 minutes, you will have both an exciting time, a frustrating time. You'll cheer, you'll cry, you'll go through all the emotions of gaming, just like that, just over and over.
Yeah.
And then you can just not worry about it ever again.
I like both these games for a very similar reason. They're pick up and play. You're instantly in the action, and then you're gone. Trust me, of the 2, I mean, they're both high score games of a completely different sort.
Yeah.
The high score game in Lloyd's is like, look at this, see what I did with Floyd, and in your game, it's like, look, I did well.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
or I've got enough guts. Someone mentioned here, the Dunk is in the house. He asked if Floyd's Bank was a play on Lloyd's. Lloyd's like Lloyd's
Lloyd's
Bank,
of London.
London. Maybe, could be, and I'm sure this was programmed in the UK because the company that did it is a UK-based outfit, Romic. But I enjoyed this one quite a bit. We did get a review. Again, when I say I enjoyed it, I almost feel guilty. I mean, trust me, I've killed games for far less than what this does, but I don't know why. It's just sort of fun.
It's just that little tinge of happiness.
It's like when you go to the carnival. Like, you know you're not going to knock the crap off the milk jug or whatever, but just don't try. You know, it's the same
That's
thing.
it.
Pajaka writes, okay, I'll cut this some slack because it's from the early days of gaming. That's not a good opening line for Floyd's Bank. It feels like the type-in game, and for the most part, I quite liked it.
Yeah.
But it all basically boils down to luck. The game is far too random, but by the time you've looped the game, the randomness / luck factor totally takes over, and skill is in the corner having a snooze. But it's a fun, and compared against the rest of the Lynx library, it's a solid 7 out of 10. So he graded on a huge curve, the Lynx curve, the Brent.
Something we do need to mention, Aaron, this game does have levels of difficulty.
Yeah, it does.
And I do believe that it's just, you're just cranking up how bad you want the game to screw you.
Yeah, because at the lowest level, it screws you pretty good, and up from there. So there's a prolific amount of screwing going on. But I enjoyed. I really like both these games.
I did too.
And I looked at the Lynx library, and it had the stuff you would expect. Did it have a Pac-Man, a good-looking Pac-Man?
Yeah.
Did it have a Space Invaders? Yes. It had a good-looking Pingo as well. So I mean, it had to. This is back when bread and butter on these systems was like your arcade ports and stuff. So there was something here, but much like other systems we've talked about in the past, they couldn't deliver it. I mean, when you have a computer, part of it is timing, a big part.
Yes.
Your competitors are always out there scheming, and they're always out there trying to advance what they're going to put out.
Yes.
And you've got to get your stuff out on time. You know, remember that computer we talked about where the guy had to go to the factory to get the parts because they took so long to get? That's what I'm talking about. You have to get these things out when they're, when you're still hot, when the technology's still there.
Yes.
And when you don't get that done, you fall behind and you sell 30,000 computer components and you're gone. I should mention as we close shop on this, I found no computer for sale links. I saw practically nothing. The only thing I found on eBay that has finished or was in the mix was a CPM manual. So the CPM at least existed in some capacity. Whether it was any good or not is who knows.
Exactly.
But I mean, this is not something. I mean, this must be a pretty rare machine because it's one normally when I look through YouTube and you see a million people talk about these things, but this is not one of those. And for gaming, it's practically completely off the map.
Yeah.
So I'm happy we got to cover it. I enjoyed it.
Although there was a 30-second clip on Floyd's Bank on YouTube, I ended up recording the footage for this one.
Yeah, I knew you had because the one that they had.
Just loop.
Yeah, send me that footage. We'll put it up.
No, we're not going to do that. All right, Aaron, we're going to go to the wheel, though, and you didn't notice what I did, but I noticed what I did.
What did you do?
A triple chat choice threat.
Oh my God.
Bam, 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 all in a row.
Let me ask you a question. What happened to the wheel tune? Where's the tune? No, the real tune, you idiot.
Yeah, let's spin the wheel. No, don't.
Come on, I want to move the wheel. Oh. Wait a minute. What are you doing? Oh, okay. I thought you were cheating.
Beautiful, but horrible games. Curtis L. Boyle.
Okay, it's L. Curtis Boyle, you knucklehead.
What did I say?
You said Curtis L. Boyle.
Oh, that L travels. It's all over the place.
You don't want to make this guy mad. He'll bring down the powerful Coco community on your shoulders.
Beautiful but horrible games there. So we're looking for a game that was ahead of its time graphic-wise, but just a dog to play.
What do you think? Do you have anything that pops in? I can think of a couple right off the top of my head.
Well, I can't do, but you'd hate me for them.
What's that mean?
Dragon's Lair.
The Dragon's Lair?
Yeah. Beautiful game, but it was hardly a game.
It's horrible.
I'm not picking that.
Great.
We've reviewed that. I love what Dragon's Lair was but I hate what it is.
Man, that's poetically said, the Brent. So
Thank
that'll
you.
be in 2 weeks, the Brent.
Yes.
Next week, what do we got cooking next week, the Brent? You don't know, do you?
We got it's cocoa time.
It's cocoa
It
time.
is finally cocoa time.
It's cocoa time next
we
week.
couldn't make it in September, but it's finally coming around.
You know, it's funny here because I asked these fine folks to pick us a game for the Cocoa Show next week, and they have not picked any game. The game selection committee sort of dropped the ball here. So we'll be coming back, I guess, with a mystery game next week for the Cocoa Show. That's okay, though, because that means we'll get to pick whatever we want. So this is dealer's choice next week. And by God, we'll choose because we got the Cocoa.
Man.
That's for darn sure.
I can't wait to.
This will be the first time we've done the Cocoa Show
I think
in this new spin. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. Man, I grew up with the game, of course, with the system, of course, and I'm looking forward to getting in there.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. That'll be next week. And in 2 weeks, we'll be coming back with beautiful but horrible games. I want to make a couple mentions here while we're at the end of the show, the Brent. First off, I have bad news. I've got bad news, Brent. Yeah, it's bad news. Last week I started pitching the BGW Battleground Wrestling show for November.
Right.
Show canceled.
Oh no! What happened?
Show canceled. I don't know. All I know is the next BGW show is in February.
Oh,
and
wow.
It may have been a new venue. I don't know yet. I don't know anything about it, but it got canceled. I was disappointed.
Well, Aaron, you know what that means. We're going to have to fill the void with our own wrestling promotion.
Well, listen, I would like to have a wrestling promotion where the outcomes are made by the AI from the game we just play, Floyd's Bank. Just random crap that happens. It's like this guy was hit by a boat.
John, get over here.
But so no BGW. However, Brent, tell the people what we do have cooking day after Thanksgiving.
We've got Thanksgiving coming up, Aaron. We're selling it all for early. And I'm not gonna hype it. I'm not gonna overhype it. Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving.
It'll be
Stay
a lot
tuned
of fun.
for details.
I think that's the only. Oh, I should mention that we are in the midst of October.
Yes,
and that means Conversations with the Dark Side. Me and Rob Flack O'Hara. We just put a show up yesterday. It was all about horror movies. The Brent horror movies. 3 big hours with Rob Flack O'Hara, and even Boat chimed in for about 20 minutes on the show too. So we had a good time. If you're into that sort of thing, it's over on the Amigos stream team area. Anything else, the Brent?
Nope.
We'll see you next time for the Cocoa Show. Until then, bam, get us out of here.
Thank you for joining us today. I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Graham W. Vecchi, Lauren Garut, Andy Craig, Mitsuyama, Chris Folds, Wolo, Jason Warrens, Oil of Hope, Terry Howard, Bitter Blitter, Kevin Bean, Andy Jones, Frodo NL, Pajaco 6502, Rob O'Hara, Oram, Brock 101, Chris Munch, Richard Smith, Retro Jerry, Petzel, Martin B, Nathan Deinhardt, Mario, Texas Foosballer, David Terrence, and Tommy Solera.